freelancing and doing a lot of 360 Google Street View photography. I'm in that program and doing freelance work. Just recently completed a project for Yorktel, an international communications company, one of their training videos, and just keeping my fingers in virtual on a daily basis, reading about it, and looking to eventually, work in the field in a non-programming capacity, which is not something really very available just yet. Programmers are the ones that are knee-deep in the development of virtual reality, but it is coming along, and I'm so proud of being part of this group and helping it in its mission. So whatever I can do to help, I gladly will. Great to be with all of you. Thank you.
And you'll see I do have signs up with things I'm hoping you guys can help me with over the weekend. And Lee, I didn't see you when I had the camera before. Are you there with your mic? Can you say hello?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi. It's a bit noisy in my house, and I'm double tasking, but I work with my island is Multiverse Master, so I'm graduating this semester, and like I said, I'm kind of multitasking, so I do apologize, but I do plan on attending this Saturday. So Eileen, feel free to reach out to me if you have some tasks I can do this Saturday as well. Oh, yeah, I found a new way to market. Basically, I tell everyone I'm not a builder, I'm not a scripter, I'm a tinkerer. So basically, I break it, see, repair it, we rebuild it, see if it works, and then break it again. That's me in a nutshell.
Well, that's good, and I think there are more and more ways that I'm learning to kind of virtually market ourselves, and this is a dynamic field. So after you all introduce yourself, I'm going to try to see if I can nail down a couple of helpers. And I did get, Selby did say he would help already. Scott and I are going to be emceeing 2 different islands for the residency because we're going to have too many to fit on one island. So he's been in the throes. I don't know if he's been able to get a hold of Susan yet, but Scott, you want to tell them what's going on and
Sure.
keep it nice.
I did touch base with Professor Susan, and she tells me she'll be there early on Saturday, so we'll work it out. So yeah, I am, this is my final year in the Mallet program, and if all goes well, I will be graduating in June of this year, and I'm very excited about that. And I have been an interior designer or a designer across multiple mediums for the past 25 some odd years, and I've been building an art studies curriculum in VR, so it's fully immersive in a gamified narrative environment, and I have a nifty little island that I've been tinkering away on, and I too consider myself a tinkerer. I get things from the Kitely market, and as Saley says, you kind of unlink everything, tear it apart, and see how long it takes you to put it back together again when you're done, and see if it works. And just been working that way mostly for the past year now, and I'm just starting to actually build more original objects in Blender and some other things. As Eileen pointed out, I will be a co-MC this coming weekend. I'll be tap dancing over on Marion Test Island, so everybody please come by and say hi at some point if you're not there. And I'm looking forward to this weekend. I think it's going to be, we had a really great time last year, so I think this weekend is going to be a lot of fun and very informative.
So thank you, Scott, and we'll all have a debriefing after this and see what happens after the weekend. But Selby, I think lots of folks know you, but not everybody, so why don't you explain your background?
Okay, I'm Shelby Evans. I am retired psychologist, professor of psychology at a university, um, and that was a long time ago. And I've been in virtual worlds ever since 2005. Um, so I have considerable experience. In Second Life, I started, and of course now I've come into Kitely and into OpenSim. Um, I am basically an evangelist for educators, educator use for virtual worlds. Um, and I'm I'm going to give you a link to an article that I is about something I'm working on, digital teaching assistant. Um, and I have a number of articles about how we could provide that in a virtual world, such as Kitely, or even in the web worlds, which is another class of worlds that I'm working with. Um, and I will be there on Saturday. I think most of the day, except at 1 o'clock your time, noon my time. I have a meeting in another with another group that I have to. Well, I'm the chairman of the board. I have to be there. Um, so, um, but I will be available to help if you any kind of help that I can provide, which of course perhaps would be helping newcomers. And in my DTA or digital teaching assistant, I am developing uh, pages that I believe could be used. Well, certainly could be used. I believe that will be useful in helping newcomers come in, start in virtual worlds. And I guess that wraps it up for me.
And plus, Selby is the font of all knowledge. He's got a blog with over 10 million hits where he compiles all sorts of useful information about virtual worlds, about education. And he generally comes in and gives us some good citations. And so I'll be encouraging everybody to get to his blog. And let me say now, Coraline is going to present to us a little bit later. She wasn't able to get her slides to me soon enough to get them posted, so I did try to email them. And Coraline, you want to just say hello, and we'll hear more from you after our meeting, but you want to just do a quick hello now?
Turn on your mic.
Yeah, you might have to keep on holding the button down.
Oh, okay. Yep, I was just saying I was a Malik graduate about 6 months ago, and I currently work for an engineering firm, while secondarily doing some augmented reality development, which I'll be touching on later. So kind of a multifaceted individual. Primarily work in visualization, so that's like graphic design, presentations, modeling, that kind of thing. But as Eileen said, I'll touch base on myself a little bit later.
Okay, well, thank you, Coraline. And I'm always a timekeeper, which is one thing I've learned, to not let meetings go beyond the time you say. And you know me, I will encourage you all to stay on if you are so inclined. But I will be heading out at 8:30. So what I wanted to just ask before we go to Caroline, or any business that you want to bring up, the residency this weekend, if you look at that board, that's not for right now, that is not a slideshow. That's just a flat JPEG up there. As I was looking, it seems as though we need 3 levels of people to help if possible. We need the helpers. The biggest thing is for those people who don't have mics that are working, or they'll be saying, I can't hear. And, rather than stop the whole presentation, I'm wondering if those of you that could serve as helpers could walk that person off to the side. just get them out beyond the range of where the speaker is speaking. We're going to have faculty. I'll be one of them, but the other three faculty are less comfortable with the environment, so they certainly aren't going to be able to do troubleshooting. And Scott and I will be there to do some troubleshooting, but we're also going to be monitoring a lot of things. So Selby, and we have 2 islands, so hopefully the mic problems will only be at the beginning. But I'm wondering, Selby, would you be comfortable? How would you suggest handling
I will
that?
try to help people who have voice problems. I have certainly helped many people over the years because that's one of the things newcomers have, problems that newcomers have, and I will try to help. I won't say I can solve all the problems, but I can solve some, I suspect.
And I have lots of tutorials on this, and I just made another one. What I've been doing is having what I'm calling onboarding meetings, and for all of the bulk of these people will be about 20 or so will be students coming in from some courses, and this is actually their assignment for the weekend. If they can't do that, then they're getting written research report they have to do. So I think there's a little incentive to their coming in. So I've been testing the mics with them. You know, I'd like to say there won't be problems, but there always are. And so I will have also some links that we can shoot out at the last minute that go over. I have tutorials. They've all had them. But there will be, we also have a woman coming in from Italy. Her name is Licia, Licia, Landi, Landi. She's been meeting up with me a little bit. She's a Latin teacher. She wants to do a virtual reality project in the future, so she's interested in seeing how this works. She's not that facile yet with VR, so she might need a little help. But I think we've been working on her mic. The problem is we're half a world away, so sometimes when she's waking up, I'm going to sleep, so she might need some help. We have some other people that might be coming in from California. I met with a group of people, Bethany, today from California. There's down in the San Diego area, there are a number of techie and healthcare people who are very interested in augmented and virtual reality. They might even come, some might come this weekend, but I might do a separate one for them at another time. I showed them the islands. They were extremely impressed. And I said, if anything looks good, it was from other artists. So, and then the stuff that I glued together is a STEM person who's trying. So they might be coming. So the biggest thing would be the biggest problem I envision is people not being able to hear. And so I will be trying to send out tutorials. Selby, anybody else who maybe could take these people off stage a bit. Scott and I will have to be pretty much there. And I will also be manning the emails. So people will be emailing me. I'm not smart enough to multitask. I'm too old for that. So the more you can help me and the more you can help Scott, I think the better. But that's the biggest concern I have. Scott, you want to just talk? I'm envisioning another category as being a moderator. Scott and I will both be sort of moderators, but the faculty will be hopefully giving me slides. I'll put them into one of these slideshows, and all they have to do is click the slides. But what happens often is, I find it myself, you get a little confused because you have to be looking at the slides, looking at the buttons, and these aren't people who are too comfortable with the space. So, Scott, do you think would it be important to have somebody besides you and I that might turn the slides for people?
It'll really depend on how many people we have there and, of course, how complicated their presentations are. I mean, I'm going to have my screen capture recording everything just nonstop, so we're just going to get a huge dump of footage at the end of the day. But and I'll be screen capturing the chat feature periodically just to make sure I keep track of those notes. It's probably not a bad idea to have a body standing by in the event things start to get complicated. I'm hoping once people are settled in and the presentations are underway, it gets a little calmer if there are no disruptions or you're not dealing with technical issues. But yeah, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to have just somebody on standby who's just knowledgeable in how to move the slide projector.
Let's see if I'd be happy to help. I don't know if you want me to moderate with the slides or whatever, but I was just going to say I'm happy to gather questions from chat, copy paste things from chat, try and transcribe if people aren't transcribing.
That's my big concern right now is just the chat window to make sure I capture all the data from chat. So if you wanted to take on something like that part of it alone, then I can moderate, Eileen. It's not a problem. I can move slides and not have to zip back and forth and just leave my screen capture thing on if somebody else is handling the chat function.
I can totally just keep an eye on the chat. If there's any questions that aren't, that somebody's, my mic's not working, I can totally make sure that I chime in and speak that questions.
Yeah, and I'll be available to at least answer questions or interject. That's fine. I just don't want to have to, I don't want to have to type a lot while I'm doing other things at the same time, because then I'm going two different directions. I'm trying to focus on a thought, and I'm trying to stay with the presenter to make sure that they're getting across.
So Bethany,
yeah, I totally understand. So I'll definitely moderate the chat the entire time. That's not a problem.
Oh, good. And Scott's going to be over on the other island.
So we need another one.
You want to tell him the island you're on, Scott, so she'll know where to go.
So as long as nothing comes up unexpected, I'm great at monitoring the chat as well.
Oh, perfect.
I was also going to say I'm happy to help a little bit. I don't know that I'm the best troubleshooter for, mics or whatever. I can talk somebody through what I see on Firestorm. But if you needed somebody at the Kitely Welcome Center at the beginning of the session to make sure they got to Marion Island, that kind of thing, I'm happy to start out. Yeah, just to, if somebody doesn't know, well, how do I get there? It's like, oh, you need to pull up the world map. Here's a picture of it. I can put some pictures or screenshots like on Google Drive, and I can chat that at somebody and say, here's what it looks like. Pull this up, put Marion Island. Yeah.
That's actually not a bad idea at all, Eileen, because that was my concern, is just getting them from logging in and into a seat, either on your island or on Marion's Test.
And I can help with the troubleshooting too.
Oh, good.
If you need.
Good. And what we have to keep in mind, I'm thinking here too, and I'm going to be monitoring emails. They'll probably come to me. I didn't want to take the liberty of having everybody pester you guys. So they'll be coming to me. So I'll be watching emails. And Bethany, if you wouldn't mind going over, Scott's going to be on the prettier island. It's called Marion Test, one word. And I'll make sure if, I don't know how early you can be there because you're out in California.
I was planning on logging in at 6:30 in my time.
Oh, we are going to have to give you a hero badge.
I get up earlier than that to go to work during the week, so I'm like, it's totally fine.
Okay. Well, if you could go with Scott and say, Lee, if you could stay here, I'll be on Marion. And
okay.
So if you could just go over with Scott, and I'll make sure you know how to get there. It's just see, I'm actually holding my mic here. My other mic is okay. Let me just. It's Marion's Test.
So with the chat, are we copying the chat at the end, or do you want us to copy the chat throughout the day to keep track of it? How is that working? Because I know monitoring the chat and answering questions and directing people through chat is one, but what about because Scott, you were talking about how you wanted to keep the chat records. Are you downloading them, or
you can do it whatever way is comfortable. If it's quicker to just do a fast screenshot, but then of course you have to remember to get it as it scrolls, or if it's easier to keep a document open on your desktop and just periodically cut and paste into it. And if you duplicate something, it's not such a big deal. You edit it later.
Okay.
But whatever works best for you, just so we have whatever the dialogue. We're going to be using this again for another paper, hopefully. And I intend to use some of the images from this for the one I got to get in on Monday.
Yeah, and Scott, I'm hoping next time when we meet, everyone will listen to your presentation because that'll be before you go to New Orleans. Maybe you could tell people about that.
Sure.
I don't know if they.
Oh, yeah. I'm very excited to say that my very first paper submitted for a global conference got accepted. And I'm in the short program for eLearn, which is being held in New Orleans this year. And I wrote a review of last year's residency based on Eileen's copious notes, and just distilled it down and gave them just an overview of how the planning went and the general feedback from the students. And I wrote it from the perspective of a participant as opposed to a presenter. And so far, they were very interested in it, and I'm very excited about it. And now I've just got to get all the visuals that I have to have ready, which are the deadline is Monday. So there goes my Sunday.
Oh, sorry.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. Bethany does quite a few presentations too. I went to her presentation to find out, and Bethany, I've had to get this thing together, but I hope we can continue to work together. This is a little team that we have of people who are working together. And so, but if Bethany, I think you both have each other's emails, Scott and Bethany. We're under all of these federal regulations. I can't keep on sending out emails unless people give permission. But Scott and Bethany, if you don't know each other's emails, may I share them among you two later?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes, of course. Yeah, by all means.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll give you mine
can
in
share
chat
my
right
email
here.
with anybody as part of the INP group. That's just fine.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to, be somebody, yeah.
Got it.
Um,
Anybody can share mine out as well. I do all this work through my school and for my work. So yeah,
oh,
absolutely.
good. Thank you.
You're from my old stomping grounds. I grew up in the Bay Area.
Nice.
I know. Oh, why did you move to New York?
Going back to something you were talking about, let me point out that you do have a chat log. If you will look up in your upper, I'm talking Firestorm now. If you look up in the upper left, first you'll find on the menu you'll find COM, communications. Click on that and look down the drop down menu, and down near the bottom you'll find conversation log.
How did I miss
Oh my
this?
goodness. How did I miss it?
Oh, thank God. See, this is why Selby is a font of wisdom and information.
Yeah, because there's so much more on these viewers than we ever, I didn't know where that was either. I knew I knew it was somewhere. I just didn't know where. Thanks, Selby.
Well, and I was asking Selby,
Now,
and I think you told me, but I didn't have a chance to implement it. Is there a way that you can, I think, automatically capture the chat?
Yes, there is. Yes, there is or is supposed to be, and I'll explain to you about that since maybe several of you will want to. Pick avatar and then preferences.
Okay, you're giving us all a great tutorial.
And then let's see. The first thing you have to do is I think it's privacy.
Privacy?
Well, logs and transcripts. Look under privacy, and then then under logs and transcripts. And you notice it says save nearby chat transcript.
Got it.
Click
okay.
that. And then that's to save it. That turns the saving on, I believe. Now, I have not verified that, but I believe it does. It always has before. Well, I verified it a long, long time ago, but I can't say, I haven't checked it recently. The other thing thing is click on the option network and files.
Mm-hmm.
And there you will see well, you see connection, and there's a clear browser cache, which sometime you might want to note about. But anyway,
Yeah.
click on directories and look down towards near the bottom line, and it says conversation logs and transcripts location.
Oh.
Mm.
Okay.
And of course, you set that. And, I would recommend setting it and leaving it where it tells you to put it, where the default, and then
In
you can
Firestorm.
open that, and let's see, I'll open, and I see something called logs, so I guess I have something. Though I don't know for sure. I've not. Now, that will save it for a long time, so you want to be sure. Well, if you got a new computer, you got plenty of room on your hard disk. But if you already got a high hard disk fairly well occupied, you probably want to keep that delete that every once in a while, because it grows hugely. As I believe, I don't know for sure, but it retains. I think it will retain. Well, if you're set up like this, for me, as on my setup, at any rate, it does retain. It is retaining recent logs for me that I can go back and read.
Okay.
So
I have to go do some digging.
yeah. So that exhausts everything I know about it.
Well, that's light years ahead of what I knew.
Okay.
And remember too, we're going to have faculty, and so they may be, in our meetings we're pretty informal and we just put things in the chat. The faculty might be directing questions, and that's where a moderator will be helpful too. Either Scott or myself, or say Lee or Bethany. If you see questions coming in, and Scott, I worked with Scott. I have an IRB that allowed me to study data collected after grades were put in. It's called secondary data analysis. And so I was able to look at things absent of names and participants. And in it, one of the comments that had come in through an evaluation form, and I'm going to ask that, we keep on reminding people to fill in evaluation forms, certainly by the end, but after a speaker if they want to. The more data we get, the better. It was very helpful. Somebody wanted a moderator. So I'm actively trying to implement some of the suggestions that came forward. And so that was, the more we can, guide that chat. I know it in my little section, I'm going to be prompting people for ideas and asking them to somewhat informally and somewhat haphazardly put some ideas into the chat. Then I'm going to actually have them visiting some other spots in the island and working in teams. So you might have to gear it to what the faculty's decided, and I don't know yet what they're all doing. They're all very busy, and so I think they're working on it as we speak. And so, just kind of take your cue from them and, guide whatever. If they want a lot of information, if they don't, I think you all know how to handle that. Another thing, too, I'm looking over at the slides here. You might want to remind people to put their mics off. There's no way that I know of that you can mute somebody as you can in some of the webinar sessions, which is something I wish you could do, because people will inevitably forget. And then you pick up all the background noise. And usually, if they're in that mode, they're not reading the chat either. But
let me clarify on that. There is no way that one person can mute. There's nobody that has the authority to mute for other people, but each person has the power to mute for themselves. To do that, simply hover your cursor over the avatar, click on the little orange cell circle that appears, and if you do that, and I'm sure you've just done that, you see a slider down at the bottom with a loudspeaker next to it. If you want to mute them, slide it all the way down to the left, and that will make them quiet. If you want them louder, of course, you can adjust it by sliding it up. And one of the things I wish people would know about this, I hear people saying, "Talk louder." Well, the person does not have to talk louder. You can control the volume, and each person can control the volume as they need it. So that's useful to keep in mind also, because there will be people that say, "I can't hear," and it's because the volume is too low.
And Scott, you and I, we factored in about a half hour to 45-minute warm up to kind of get everybody up to speed before the faculty come in. I'm anticipating or hoping the faculty will come in the whole time, but they've kind of committed to coming in for their 2 time slots. And so, Scott, I'm thinking that's a good point. I used to know that. I've kind of forgotten it and don't use it, but I think Scott and I will work together on some singing and dancing notes. Scott tap dances. I do gestures.
Yeah.
So we have to have some crowd warm-ups, and basic etiquette and mics and those kind of things. So Scott, do you think we could manage to bring those in too? Because just how do you focus in?
Just general activities. We are gonna try and have them try and build at some point. Are we still doing that?
I tried and had. I don't know. Maybe you and I will talk a little bit more about that, Scott. It did work. But the only way I could get it to work was by making the whole island available for people to build, and they did love it. I had trees coming out of rugs. I didn't know how to get them all out, and I didn't have the sandbox turned on. Well, let me ask Selby while he's here. Selby, I was trying to just designate a particular sandbox. Well, let me just say, in Second Life, I used to be able to set up sandbox areas and control things.
Okay, wait a minute. I know what. I know what you want to assign a particular area where everybody can build. You want to make a sandbox. Basically, you simply make a particular parcel, and for any parcel that you have, you can set the conditions to determine who can. You can basically, there's a place where you set it so that anybody can build. And however, I'm going to recommend, I really don't think it's a good idea to have amateur faculty with no previous experience, trying to.
It wouldn't be the faculty. No, the faculty don't learn that fast. It would be.
Yeah, Eileen. The amazing
the thing is, there is no need. There is practically no need for anybody to build if they want to teach in the virtual world. There's all sorts of resources available that they can buy from Kitely Market, and there's all sorts of other stuff.
Well, no, it's for more than that. It's a group activity, and the students enjoyed it.
Right.
It was just. Okay. It got a little crazy. We were trying to see, and Saley, I think she wants to say something. Sorry, Saley.
Yes, because I just learned this, and I shut down my sandbox on my island because of the most recent meeting in Kitely with the Kitely owner, and basically, what was described was it's a very bad idea to have public sandboxes on islands because they crash the islands. Now, Kitely has a public sandbox, a whole island. And what happens with building is if they are building or scripting, and of course griefers as well, was the main reason. But why not just take a group and take them to the Kitely sandbox? Because that way it's a public sandbox. it's designed to have a lot of people there, and you're not putting your island at risk at all.
Yeah, that's a very good point, and I've just had enough trouble with some scripting errors on mine not too long ago, so I'd rather not revisit it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what? Again, that's a quick tutorial. Again, they just have to follow you to the Kitely sandbox as a group, and then to get back here, they just hit the back arrow at the top of their screen, and it takes them back to wherever they last appeared.
Yeah, I would recommend that you also give them a landmark.
Landmark, good point.
Actually, as quick as possible, it would be a good idea to give them landmarks to the 2 islands that you have.
Yeah.
Because then they can
Right
go
off the
back
bat.
and forth, and they will not have any problems. Those will work for sure.
All right, good point.
Yeah, maybe have all 3 landmarks, maybe on a note card or something, so they get multiple different ways they've gotten it delivered. The Kitely Welcome Center is one, the Kitely Sandbox is another, the 2 islands. Yeah.
I will tell you, I had the great note card experiment, and I have to report it failed. What I did was I made a note card with a bunch of landmarks. The problem was I made too many landmarks. When you get over to Marion Test, it's a beautiful island, but one of them was built, I call it the Citadel. If you try to just, which is always my bottom line, just double click in an area and move to it, you come in under the build. And so for that one, you have to fly. So I thought, okay, I would be smart and I would put everything into landmarks. And I gave them out yesterday and the night before when I had 2 classes. They kind of, I was dealing with 15 and 20 people in 15, I think, in both classes. Some were real newbies, and I was trying to, they all have note cards right now. The students do, the ones from the classes. And they should be able to hop around to quite a few places. But the problem was I was trying to send them in teams, and they weren't able to understand fast enough, so I had people on different levels. Some got it right away, and I said, okay, will you go? And I kind of told them where to go because there were too many choices. But the little activity I'm going to do will have them hopping around to different places on Marion Test. So hopefully they'll have a sense of it, but I thought it was going to be easier. And I was there kicking myself when Scott kept on giving me teleports. And I kept on saying, well, no, I'll just figure this out because I didn't have time to figure out the teleports. So typical me, I made it a little too complex, trying to be helpful, and they can use it later. But getting from place to place became more of a problem than I thought. And yeah.
Eileen, the one thing I'll say about the teleports, and especially the script I gave you, you can put in a Z-axis.
Oh, yeah.
So it puts you on top of the mountain, and as long as you put in like a Z.2, so where you actually teleports you to a foot above the ground, you drop onto the right spot without any undue trouble. And that's the one beauty of that teleport script, is I can teleport somebody to a sky island or whatever I want to send them to. It's just a location in space, not the location on the map. The map locations, you're right, are when things start to get complicated and squirrely.
Well, and the problem I had wasn't so much even explaining it or getting them there. It was trying to get 15 people at once who were learning note cards, who were learning landmarks.
Let me give you an important item of instruction regarding that. Right now, look down and click the people button that you have. And that's the place where you have 2 heads. Now, what you opened up, and you'll see that you opened up nearby. Now, you see everybody who is anywhere near here, probably anybody on the island. What you don't realize, try this, double click on any one of those people.
Am I going to end up in someone's lap?
Nope, you're not going to go anywhere.
I picked Al too. Let me go to Say-Lee.
Oh, okay.
Oh. Say-Lee, what kind of eyes do you have?
Now, in other words, if you are in Eileen's group and you're looking for her, you can find her anywhere on the
Oh,
island.
oh,
Furthermore,
wow.
furthermore, the other thing, hopefully you've got it set so that you can double-click teleport. If that is so, then you simply double-click on the ground nearby and
Uh-huh.
drive.
So if,
That is the
next
instructions
to
I
the
would give
next
to
to the person
everybody.
that I have. Right.
Yeah, anybody. Well, and this is anybody. All you have to do is know the name because you'll get a list of everybody.
Right.
So,
Now,
in
if
other
I
words,
go-
Ugh.
this is the best instructions I think you can give to people. If they are lost and can't find where they're supposed to
Looking
be,
at Eileen.
they do know who they're supposed to be with. And if they click that button, they can find that person. They can locate that person and teleport to
okay.
that person.
Oh, that's
now-
so helpful, Selby. Thank you. I think I'm going to make some little videos on each of these little
Yeah.
gems.
Hey, Selby,
Really?
is it a preset to double click to teleport? Because I'm not doing it. I'm double clicking right next to Eileen and I'm not getting it.
Okay, all right, let me tell you how to set that. There is a setting that you have to set up for that. And again, you go to preferences.
Okay.
You look down the item until you get to move and view.
Yep.
And let's see, I believe it's, it's under the movement tab. That's the third tab. Look down at the bottom, and it says
Yeah.
single click on land, move to click point.
Yes. Teleport to
Double
click.
click on land, teleport to click point. At least that's the way what mine says. Okay?
And then
Was
I
that-
can move on a single click. That's great. Because I know you could do that in SL, and I hadn't figured out how to do it here. Okay.
Well, actually, it's exactly the same because
I'm sorry.
you're using Firestorm, which is the same in SL. Basically, the arrangements are the same in SL or Kitely.
Okay.
All right, and I'm watching the clock, and what I'm thinking kind of assigning people. So if Bethany and Scott work together on, figuring out the moderation, the chatting, preserving the chat, things like that. So if you two work, Saley and I will work together on our end.
Okay.
Selby's going to be a helper, kind of clicking back and forth, or maybe he'll want to stay in one versus the other.
No, I'll move back and forth to see if things are not are quiet in
Okay.
one place. I'll
And
go to the
Scott,
other.
if you and I could, we can kind of caucus or meet or do something and go over what we've just learned and kind of go over some logistics. I'll tell you a little bit more about the group of people. I want to give Coralyn a chance too to
Okay.
tell us something about her work. And so, but the other thing I'm going to see if I can, in my activity, part of my goal, I'm still working on it, is going to be to have students submit to me through a Google form a possible STEM or STEAM activity that I'm going to try to get them to go in teams because I want them to learn how to work in teams. I also want them to do some initial brainstorming. So I'm just looking for people who might be willing later, if I gave them the output that I get, to be reviewers. And hopefully, if I get this organized, it's going to be just a matter of looking through and rating people on different parameters. So that was just another piece. I was hoping that maybe some of the people who couldn't even come might be able to help out there. I don't know how many I'm going to get, but I didn't want to be the reviewer myself. I might have a bias. So anyway, I will rattle your cages later on that one if I do get enough data back. But I think so. We have some people assigned. We've got some helpers that'll pop back and forth. I think the biggest logistical issue are going to be the mics. And then Scott and I and all of you, we need to put together a plan to how do we get people to different places and come back. That navigation. Once they get it, it's not hard, but I will tell you from the last 2 nights, I saw how more problematic it was than I had expected. But
Well, let me remind you the system I just described to you will get them to any location that you are at, or any location that Al or anybody else
Is it if they're on the
or
same
I'm at.
Oh,
island?
wait,
Do they
is
have to
that
be on the same
intra-island?
island?
They
Okay.
have to be on the same island, yes.
Oh, but I
Okay.
love that.
If they're friends with you, if they're friends with you, and they can also request teleport. So if they get
That's true.
lost
Yeah.
somewhere in cyberspace, they can just find Eileen, request teleport, and then you just click yes, and they'll teleport right to you.
That's right. And
I
well,
forgot about
And
that.
and
Scott
Eileen, of course,
too.
can send them a
I try to get them
teleport.
to friend me, but honestly, what happens, I'll be emailing somebody, coordinating this, screencasting that, um, and Scott and I mean, we'll be texting each other. Sometimes I miss them. So, I miss somebody, or they'll send me something privately, and I don't know how to respond to a private chat. So, I'll keep that there too, but I think sometimes I'm not too good at multitasking and getting to them. So, please back me up. But I think certainly, Scott, what I saw, what Selby showed me, will make it really easy if we make sure that people at least know the name of the person they're working with. We've got a few older timers there
Yeah.
who have the older names that they got from Second Life, which makes it harder to know who they are. Although I guess on the list it'll come up, because the Second Life used to give you cryptic names. But anyway, well, Carlin, I did send out her PowerPoints. They came a little late, so I couldn't post them. But before we all have to leave, if you would type in the chat or email me any questions or things that come up, Scott and I will do a little more pondering, and I think we've got some helpers. And Carlin, if you guys don't mind just giving her your attention for a little bit, she's going to be doing a presentation and would like us to get a chance to hear some of it. And Carolyn, we don't have too much time, so I know when you're up presenting, you're not going to have too much time either. So how about you give us a kind of an overview?
Sure. Okay, so did everybody get the slides?
Eileen, when did you send them? Because I didn't
I
get anything
forwarded them.
today.
Well, Carolyn only gave them to me about 4 o'clock today, so I forwarded them out. What I'll do is, while Carolyn's starting to talk, I will find that email and send it out again. Okay.
Okay. I've got my
I
email
will
box
do that
open.
right now.
All right.
Okay. All right, well, I guess I can probably start so you guys aren't here all night. But yeah, so good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining me tonight to discuss my presentation. I will be presenting at the Women in Tech conference at the end of October in Boston, Massachusetts. But tonight I wanted to discuss the technology with you known as augmented reality and some of the real world applications that it has beyond gaming and marketing, which is what it's become famous for. So I'm just trying to do this without you guys seeing the slides. So some of you may notice that my voice is a little hoarse. Over the last 5 years, I personally have had to come to terms with a limitation in my own reality, you can say. At the age of 27, I began experiencing vocal issues, and by the time I was 30, I was left with the voice you hear tonight. And at that time, I was diagnosed with a neurological disease called laryngeal dystonia, which at this time is incurable to my knowledge. This limitation in my life meant trying to figure out creative ways of addressing what I could do and what I wanted to do. And lucky for me, technology has afforded me the benefit in overcoming some of these technical challenges, and ultimately what inspired me personally to pursue augmented reality. So, In the digital age, technology basically allows us to live a virtual life, but we don't live in a matrix. So there's always a time where digital and the physical need to come together to enhance our world around us. Um, that's where augmented reality, which is also known as AR, can help bridge the gap between the physical and our imaginations. This allows for more possibilities, which I want to explore with you. Um, AR uses digital visuals on a digital computer overlay into the real world environment. There's different types of AR, from marker based to markerless to location based, and each one of these types of AR has its own strengths and its own weaknesses. Um, some are good for overlaying AR on a fixed space. Some are good for working within a room or using a flat plane, such as a floor, to render the augmented reality. And some applications work well in GPS location based, such as wayfinding experiences, mapping, that kind of thing. AR can be both tactile through the use of devices like tablets. It can also be digitally engaging through the use of headsets, such as the HoloLens. But either of these devices ultimately has the function of enhancing our physical world through augmented reality. So, augmented reality has many uses. It can be used in training and education. It can be used in field work like architecture, engineering, and construction. Or there's other possibilities that can benefit from any type of environment that could use an overlay in a physical space. Education training has a unique opportunity in augmented reality. So I want to take a look at one particular case study that overcame an obstacle in nursing simulation. Traditional nursing simulation labs have an interactive experience. Students work with mannequins in a setting that looks like a real hospital, and they act out case studies assigned to them by their instructors. So, what's the obstacle with that? Well, as good as nursing simulations might be, they lack physical capabilities like mobility. They also can't show pain or infections, such as, oozing and some of those physical traits, bruising. But augmented reality can kind of assist in filling in this gap. One application that I worked on developing a pilot study for, known as AR Neurosimulator, was piloted in a nursing school in New York. And using a 3D model and a tablet, students could visualize the mannequin's symptoms, neurological symptoms. This app uses marker-based technology, so the students were able to visualize how they could scan the mannequin's face using these markers, and then these markers would then display the rendering that you see within this slide. Students felt that this was very beneficial to their education because they can learn through more visualization versus pretending with a rigid mannequin. The mannequin becomes animated, can talk, blink, and shows those physical complications and injuries. And so the nurses experience these realistic symptoms in real time outside of the hospital, where they may otherwise never experience these symptoms. And as such, this limits the risk to patients. So overall, most students felt that this was a positive experience for them. Sorry, one second.
I did try to send them out again. I hope people can get the slides.
Sure.
Okay, good. Yeah, they came out. Al, if you could just send me your email. I had trouble with yours, but I think everybody else got the slides. So.
Oh, okay, great. So if you're following along, on slide 13, field applications. All right. So, education and training isn't the only sector that can benefit from augmented reality. Industries such as engineering and construction are also finding augmented reality useful. In one example, an issue that these companies run into, such as engineering firms, is finding utilities underground. Traditionally, field workers are left with paper plans to find these utilities underground. But using technology such as AR with GIS, which stands for Geographical Information Systems, it's a mapping software, and CAD models, uh, they can utilize location-based and marker list-based AR overlays and 3D models while on site to help find underground sewers, electrical and gas pipes, and gas lines. So the benefit of this is obviously safety. If they can visualize it, there's less of a chance that they'll run into an accident, which is big for engineering firms. And then secondarily to efficiency. If they're not working with a paper plan, they're actually visualizing the pipes and utilities underground. They can officially go right to that site and fix it and track it. So, like all tech, augmented reality has limits. The AR is unique that it interacts with the world, such as, our surrounding environment, and as such, it's affected by the surrounding environment, such as connectivity issues or working in too small or big of a space to render the computer graphics properly. It's also an emerging technology, so there's limited support, there's limited resources. Devices are emerging, but you have to be kind of creative in developing an augmented reality application. And it can be a distraction to users if they're dealing with issues such as technical issues, user error that might frustrate the user. So you want to make sure that the application is functioning properly in order to get the most benefit out of it. So I'd like to think of this as a think before you tech type of rule, where planning for an effective AR solution will allow you to create an effective solution no matter what that application might be. So there's a couple of questions to consider in your augmented reality strategy. If you're looking to develop an augmented reality application for whatever industry you're in, whether that's education or some kind of application-based sector, there's a couple of questions that you can follow which are applicable to any application. First thing you want to ask yourself is your environment indoors or outdoors? This is going to influence what type of augmented reality application you want to use, whether that's going to be marker-based or location-based. GIS based applications don't work too well, obviously indoors, because they can't use the location-based. So these are things that you want to try to figure out. And secondarily, you want to ask yourself who and what is around you. Who is going to be interacting with this application? Is it a sole user, or are they using it as a group? And secondarily, what is that environment that's around them? Is there going to be things that affect that application, such as furniture or structure or the ground that it might render on? Secondarily, what kind of AR makes the most sense to you? Are you looking for something that's marker-based, where you want to just render something on a stagnant image, such as a paper or a QR code? Or does it make more sense to be markerless? Do you want to render something within a big environment or floating above the ground? Or if you're looking for something outdoors, are you looking to do something with location? Your ideals and your needs needs for your AR application is going to kind of deter you to which AR technology makes the most sense for you. And then secondarily, what tech do you plan to use? Are you looking to use a tablet? Are you looking to use a headset? What kind of budget are you working with? Using this information, you can formulate what plan might work best for you. When it comes to education and you're looking to intersect that into a classroom, something like a tablet might be more market ready and easier to introduce. If you're working in a big corporation with a big budget, headsets such as HoloLens might make sense. You want to ask yourself which of these technologies makes the most sense for your application. And then lastly, how do you visualize these users interacting with the augmented reality? And furthermore, how do you visualize them interacting with each other? So are they going to be using this AR again by themselves, or are they working within a team? What does that environment look like? What goals are you hoping that they'll achieve out of that? So these strategies really help you to develop an AR application that's customized to your needs. And when it comes to augmented reality, that is fundamentally the most important thing, is customization and making sure that it fits your environment and your overall goals. Augmented reality has a lot of potential in filling a lot of needs and gaps, and I believe that it's a bridge to a lot of different solutions between what's physical and where our imaginations might take us. And I look forward to seeing all the solutions that will soon be coming out when it comes to augmented reality and how those limitations are being overcome as well. So thank you for your participation tonight, and I look forward to your comments.
Yeah, and
Awesome.
finally,
Very
Carlin, I
nice.
think they did get the handouts. So
Yes.
it was a
Okay,
great
great,
overview for me
Good
too,
plug.
but I will let the group chime in.
great. Sure.
But yeah, that was awesome. I think that's a really, it's a great topic and really very, yeah, really exciting. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
And you will tend to get from, depends on the group too, and I forgot the exact group, but you know, some will want to know pragmatically how close this is to implementation. So would you have an answer? And I know even from your own work, how teacher friendly is this, or is this really big scale, need a big team to do right now?
Okay, sorry, my microphone keeps going off on me tonight. Well, when it comes to the AR NeuroCheck application, that would be something that is pretty easy to implement once the application is fully developed. And it was developed that way so that it could be easy to implement. Because when it comes to community colleges and that kind of thing, where this application resides, that's really necessary so that it can be kind of market ready, packaged, and ready to implement quickly. So it really depends on, you know, your goals. This presentation is kind of an overview on the different industries that can use augmented reality for things outside of gaming. And marketing, which is heavily where a lot of people, I think, are looking at AR. But I think more and more people from these different industries, whether that's education or a firm like I work for, Tetra Tech, which is a huge corporate engineering firm, which still, believe it or not, isn't fully, you know, engulfed in this technology, mostly because they don't have the people that have the wherewithal or the knowledge of visualization tools like augmented reality. So, you know, there's going to be different solutions based off of your needs and your budget and the development. For instance, with the GIS location-based That is actually a application that works with the software Esri, which is used for like GIS marking and mapping and that kind of thing. Um, and there's applications out there right now that you can kind of tie in like your GIS data with your CAD modeling, and then techs can go out on site and utilize that. But there's a lot of customization that needs to be done because you need to plug in your own data and your own needs. Um, at Tetra Tech, I work for a solid waste firm, so they're thinking about using augmented reality to find landfill gas, leachate pipes and things like that under the ground so that they can, do operations and maintenance. And so their budget is going to be way bigger than, say, community colleges from SUNY, who's looking to implement it. So it's, there's lots of applications out there. There's lots of things that you can do. It's just a matter of deciding what, I guess, fits the best for you. Um, right now, I would say tablet-based augmented reality is probably the easiest method to go with, along with marker-based, so you can scan a QR code and work with, software like Euphoria and Unity, and so that's a little bit easier because it's fixed and you don't have to worry too much about physics and location and, that kind of thing. But, the headset's bigger budget, maybe it works, but maybe doesn't, maybe it's a distraction. So, again, it all depends on, what your ultimate needs are.
This reminds me a little bit of a presentation that was when you were talking about the ArcGIS and how augmented reality overlays with like mapping and power, water, power, sewage, that kind of thing. I went to an immersive learning research network conference in London, and I presented a paper on virtual world stuff. But Layla Gordon, who's in the research and innovation at Ordnance Survey in the UK, and she's a researcher at the National Mapping Agency, and she talked about geospatial information and digital overlays with situational analysis in business construction and whatnot. So that kind of reminds me of some of what your work is. I'll put in her name here. She's at Digital Ordnance Survey UK, and her name is Layla Gordon, and she's in research and innovation. So I don't know if she, I just reminded me because innovation. That's cool. Great talk.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the information. Yeah, for sure. Especially with, my other work. Like I said, I'm kind of involved in so many things. I have my full-time job, and then I have my this project that I started in the pilot program that I would really like to get up and running, because the pilot program works so well. If I was presenting at an educational conference, I probably would focus on the AR Neuro app and more the pilot study. This particular audience is so widely based. There's women coming from anything from marketing to IT to there. So I just wanted to kind of give an oversight on how this overarching technology is being utilized, and come up with a way that they could start to think about how they could start implementing augmented reality into whatever industry they might be working in as well.
So Carlin, I actually have to leave. I'm meeting with a group of faculty early, but I want to thank you very much.
Okay.
And I encourage you
wow.
all to stay. This is just a space, as long as you can, and give Carlin ideas. But I think for the Mallet folks here too, the fields are growing logarithmically now with augmented, virtual, 3D, visual. I'm just finishing a book chapter. Looking now, there are so many things coming out in this area that I was asked to participate in something with a group of cognitive psychologists. I should have sent them over to Selby, but they're really trying to find what are these common elements, or are there? but we're now moving into what I call just immersion in so many different ways. And you folks who've been exploring the technologies, looking at how do people learn with these, designing your own. Carlin did a wonderful prototype. You know, she's seeing opportunities that could be as big as working for another group, or it could be consulting. So there are lots of things coming up in all sorts of different ways. So I'm going to have to exit, but as long as you can share among yourself, and for Bethany, it's actually only a little after, gee, it's like 5:45 for her. So anyway, but I do have to leave. Please stay on. And Bethany, thank you for coming.
I'm gonna
And I'll.
thank you for having me.
Yeah. Oh, anytime.
Thank
And
you
so,
for having
thank
me.
you all,
Yeah.
Selby, everybody else. Selby has been a constant help to all of us. So I will say goodnight and turn off my recorder, but stay on as long as you can. And please, you know, this is to be an opportunity for us to all share. So good night, everybody. And Scott, yeah, I'll be in touch with you, Scott.
Good night.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye-bye.